Hi, everybody. We're here today, Inside Scoop with Sue, to talk to Erin Geiger Smith about voting, the elections. She is a reporter and author of Thank You for Voting. So thank you for being here, Erin, and let's get into business. We don't have a lot of time to get all of this in. The elections are happening as we speak.
Exactly.
In fact, I voted already. I went down with my daughter, and it was really a powerful moment. Like, this is a big year.
Yeah, that's so exciting. I can't vote until, here in New York, I can't vote until this weekend, and I think I'm going next Tuesday to hopefully lessen that first day.
Yeah. I mean, we had long lines. We waited there for a long time, but there was something very patriotic about being there. And like, some guy was walking around going, "Today's a great day for democracy." And I thought, yeah, this is cool.
Yeah. I love that stuff. I'm like, it is, it's great. It's so exciting. I have always loved voting, even way before I did this deep dive. It's exciting. You get to show up and say what you want.
Even when things are crazy. So let's focus a little bit on that. For parents who are watching, first of all, I want to tell everybody who's on, you are welcome to ask questions and just put comments in the comments, and we'll share them. So what should we tell our kids, particularly our tweens and teens, about the tone of this election?
I think, as always, almost always with parenting, honesty is the best policy. That you should really say what it is that's happening, whatever your perspective is. I think nearly any of us can agree this is not our most civil election. And so I think by starting to say how you want candidates to act and how you would like them to behave and speak about is a great way to frame it. And then also, there are always so many elections going on wherever you are in your whichever state or county. Find a politician who you do think is comporting themselves in the way that you would like and point them, use them as an example. It's also a great opportunity to talk about why it is we vote. If there's someone who is really acting in a way that you don't think represents your country or your state or what you want it to be, it's an opportunity to say, and this is why I'm voting for the other candidate, because whatever the race is, he or she acts the way that I want them to act and speaks kindly, or, I don't think you should ever back away from your own values or be honest. And then it's also a chance to say, look, no candidate is perfect. Everybody's going to stumble, but this is how we hope they are most of the time. I have a 6-year-old, so he's a little too young for this, but he still sees and hears these things. And I just try to say, yes, we don't like to talk that way about others or speak that way about others, but this is what we want to happen. And also to point out what the job is. So to describe, if you're talking about president, what presidents do and why it's important they have characteristics. Just teach about the office as much as you can, I think.
And I love the idea that, every election has more than just one election going on. So we're so focused on the president, as we should be, but we can also highlight someone else who's representing the leadership that we would like to see. So that's a really good point.
It also just teaches kids, too, that there are so many things that we vote for. So if you have a great mayor or a great sheriff, tell them about them. And I think it's helpful in a lot of ways, but there's always someone out there providing a good example.
How do we get them engaged? How do we get tweens and teens to start? I mean, I know there's always a lot of conversation about like student council is a place where, you start in that election mode and then showing some leadership. What are the ways today where we can encourage kids who seem to have a greater interest to get involved?
Sure. I mean, that's exactly it. Saying how, we live in communities, we live in our family is a unit, and then your school is a unit, and we just are all part of these bigger and bigger units. And in all of those units, someone is making a decision, and you want to be part of that decision making. So that's just a way to kind of remind teens how the world is set up and that we participate at all these different levels. But on kind of a larger, to talk about larger national or state things, whatever it is they're interested in. If you have a kid that's interested in science, then you can talk about climate issues. If you have a kid that is really frustrated that they can't go to school right now, or are going to school and, feel like remote would be better at this point in time, you can talk about how the school board makes that decision. Just whatever. My big takeaway from reporting this book, and especially focusing on how low voter turnout is for young people, it's not that they're apathetic. Every kid cares about their school. If they're older, they care about what type of job they can have in the summer, who's going to pay for their college. And so relating all of those things that are important to their life to what elected officials do, I think is really helpful.
That's great, because one of the questions I have for you is, why have young adults historically been the least likely to vote? So tell us why, but also, like you answered, how? How do we do that?
The whys are so many, but the two big things that I learned are, number one, that we do a terrible job teaching kids how to vote. So we are a country that is so proud that nearly everybody over 18 can vote, and we're a democracy, and it's all wonderful, and that's all true. But we say, you should vote, you should vote, we should vote. We don't say, and you need to make sure you're registered in your state X days before the election. And you have to know that make sure you have the right type of ID in some states. You're going to have to look up where your polling place is. And if you vote early, that polling place might be different. So we do all of these. We fail to really teach those step-by-step things. We also fail to relate to them why it's important, I think. And then the third is that for many people in that younger age group, there are barriers that still make it harder, whether it's those long registration periods. In some states, you can't use your college ID to vote, and that might be the only ID that a kid has that is reasonable for that election. Like if you're a college student, you only have an out-of-state driver's license or something, that might be an issue. So it's these, we don't teach the mechanics and we don't relate to it enough. But I really feeling like we blame young people for not voting, and we need to be, if you're out of that 18 to 29-year-old age range, you kind of need to look at yourself and think, wait, have I bothered teaching the 16, 17-year-olds in my life how to vote? That just hit me over and over, how much better of a job we need to do, which means it wasn't fun being my niece, my 18-year-old niece. And although she voted and was enthusiastic, but she did stop replying to my text after a while. I don't know why that is.
Okay, so if you are a college kid with only a college ID, is there any workaround?
Well, in every state, there's a workaround. That's the other thing. You have to look at what is happening in your state. And some states don't require a photo ID at all. So you have to look, and there's a website called vote411.org that's run by the League of Women Voters. And they do a great job of breaking it down and saying what you need. There are a lot of places that do that, but I think vote411.org is user-friendly and really gets into the details. So that's especially for young people that aren't living in the state where they grew up. You have to check early to make sure either you request your absentee ballot and vote at home where you are registered, or what you need to do to vote where you are in college if you're getting to
So if you're a parent right now who hasn't really taught your kid and you're listening to this and thinking, is this too late? You can go to vote 411.
Yeah. And in some states, the truth is it might be too late. I mean, that if in some states, in a lot of states now, the registration date has passed. But conversely, a lot of states allow same-day registration. So you can register in person on election day, or sometimes during the early voting period. So it may not be too late at all. So just check where you live.
Why do we vote on Tuesday? It's so challenging for people who can't get off of work. I mean, it puts so many obstacles. Why isn't it a weekend vote?
Because we stick with tradition forever. And it started, it was originally Tuesday because of farming schedules to give people who lived far away, make them not have to travel on Sundays, since Sunday was a day of rest. And then it matched up too with freeing up the other days to help get crops to marketplaces and things. So Tuesday was the most convenient day. And there are plenty of movements to try to make it a national holiday or move it to a Saturday, that sort of thing. But it's like they have momentum and maybe it'll work soon, but for now it is what it is. One thing that I am seeing a lot more of though is companies giving employees time off to vote, and really helping provide employees with information about voting. And I think that can make a big difference. I mean, if a groundswell of employees did this, it makes it much easier. And it has the benefit of, if you make it a national holiday, then all schools are closed and then parents lose childcare. And so, that's an issue too. So I love the idea of employers getting much more involved. And there's a big movement for that. More than 1,000 companies, large and small, this election season are giving employees time off.
Yeah, a few of my kids have that for their jobs where I'm not sure if they all got the day off, but they all were given time. Like you can take paid time to go vote. So
and it's really great. And something, honestly, that I hope that as college kids apply for jobs, that's one of the lists, on the list of things they consider is how does this company support and promote voting? Because I think it's a big deal and it's something to think about. And, some companies like Patagonia, for instance, are extremely active in helping their employees vote and asking them to be poll workers and things like that. So it's a thing for college kids to add to the list to sort of get a feel on what a company's environment is, I think.
That's great. Okay, this is a really big question, and it's not just for our kids. So it's one thing to go out and vote. It's another thing to be informed when you go do that. And despite our best efforts, we could still fall short because you know what it's like right now. There's just so much information, so much misinformation. How do we parse through that? And how do we teach our kids to do that same thing?
Yeah, you're right that it's a big question because it is a huge learning curve for everyone. And the curve changes every day. I mean, we have so much information coming at us. So for elections specifically, to narrow it down to how do you show up to your polling place or sit down, vote by mail, and feel comfortable, is to know ahead of time what's on your ballot. So go and check. Vote411.org. Again, we'll have your list of ballots. Vote Save America has that feature too, and your local elections board should as well. So if you find out what's on your ballot and can research those particular people and issues first, a special amount of work, but it's the way to do it. A lot of people split it up with friends. So if you have friends who have the same political leanings as you, or you trust their judgment, split your ballot up and have someone do the judges and someone do the school board and sheriff, or how you want to split it up. On the larger question of just staying informed day to day, obviously I'm a reporter, so I'm a big proponent of reading the news. And my best advice with that is just to reading something online, whether it's in your Facebook feed or homepage, whatever it is, know where that information came from. And if it's from a place that you're not familiar with, if it's a news organization you've never heard of, take the time to look up what that organization is and if they have political leanings, if they don't. I just think anytime you're reading information, you want to know who it is that's giving it to you. And ideally, the reporter who wrote it was as close to being in the room, as they say, as possible. Either they saw it themselves or they talked to people who were there. And, if you're reading something and it sounds like someone's yelling at you, that's not your best source for information, period. I truly, truly believe that finding an objective news source is a voter superpower because it lets you think on your own what you believe. And it also just allows you to take in the information without it coming from, a place of bias. And we all read news sources that align with our ideals, and that's fine, because that also helps you, because we don't have time to know everything in the world. If an organization that you trust believes in a certain candidate, it's totally reasonable for you to use that as a source of information when you go to the polls. But you just want to make sure as well that you're reading news that can give you a full picture of candidates, because I think it's important for us to know too the things that the candidates wish that we didn't sometimes. So
it's a big commitment. It is a big commitment, and I love that one point about if you feel like you're being yelled at, if someone's screaming at you, and that's a great tip. Are there any other tips kind of like that?
Sure. I mean, I think if any article should be presenting both sides of an argument. And that doesn't mean that if someone says something that's that's not true, that you have to, like, as a reporter, if someone tells me something that's not true, I don't have to go find someone who also believes that untruth. That's not what both sides are, but it's presenting the information and then saying, if someone tells you something that's not true, say that isn't true and why it's not. But newspaper articles just need to be, or articles, no matter where you see them, they're going to be reasoned. They're going to give you the who, what, when, why. They're going to have people that support whatever the topic of discussion is, and then it should say why, what the opposition says too. If any article is completely one-sided, then the person hasn't done their job. And in most places, that won't run in a mainstream news organization. Your editor will send you right back to work. And I think, honestly, the same is true for editorial content, where the writer does have is taking a position and trying to convince you of something. But even in an article like that, a good one that has done its research will point out what the other side says and then say their own arguments against it. But all articles that are useful will give you a fuller picture of an issue.
Also, great tip. That's great. Okay, so Lori, she wants to tell you that you're awesome.
Thank you, Lori. I appreciate it. That's
Lori,
I'd like everyone.
Lori's been taking her son since he was in elementary school to be involved in voting and election and politics. So yay, Lori.
Yeah.
Okay. There's so much confusion about early voting. Can you clarify? Like, is it provisional? Is it like this?
No. Yeah, let's do it. So if you are I know how annoying it is that every single answer I give starts with, look at what's happening in your state, but that's the truth. We have 50 different election systems in this country, and that's just the unfortunate fact. So look up, as the first thing you need to do is look up and see if your state has early voting. Most do, so the answer is probably yes. And then see what the dates are. So like I mentioned, like my mom in Texas voted earlier this week, and Texas started last week early voting, whereas New York, we start this Saturday. So the dates are very different. But if you early vote in person, it's the exact same as if you were voting on election day. It's not provisional. It is the exact same as election day. You're just getting it done early. And the reason that myself and every other person in the voting world are telling people so constantly to vote early is because of COVID. There are fewer polling locations this year, and we just want to keep the lines down as much as possible. With everyone keeping 6 feet, that makes just a way longer line, a line that looks way longer. And also, depending on what the polling location is, they can maybe have fewer people in there. So it's just an expectation that voting will take a little longer this year. So if you can vote early and leave election day for those people who really can only vote on that day for whatever reason, it's just the best idea. So everyone's pushing early voting in person for the purely logistical, trying to keep the lines down. And then also from a practical standpoint, because this year feels uncertain for many reasons. I mean, if you get your vote in early, you don't have to worry about if you're sick on election day, or if your kid's sick, or if Zoom school goes totally awry, any of those things. So it's just making a plan for when you're going to vote, and making a plan B this year is really important. Early voting in person does differ from mail-in or absentee voting, because it's, you know, if you're mail-in voting, you're getting your ballot, you're filling it out at home or wherever, and either mailing it or dropping it off, whereas in-person early is the same process as in-person on election day. Your polling place just might be different. That's the only difference.
Okay, here's our last question.
Okay.
Based on your observations and what you learned while writing the book, what are you hopeful about in terms of voting?
I am very hopeful. In the short term, I'm very hopeful that we're going to see a big jump in that 18 to 29-year-old age group for turnout. So in 2016, that group only turned out at 46%. And overall turnout was 60%, which is still terrible, not great, but that's a huge difference between overall turnout and young people. And our oldest voters, 65 and older, vote at 70% or sometimes above. So it's a big, young people are leaving a ton of votes on the table, and that's just not great, not what we want in a functioning democracy. So what I'm hopeful about is, in reporting this book, I saw so many young people who are being innovative and engaged and using all of their forms of social media to reach their friends, both, you know, both in person and online, to help them learn how to vote. And it's made a big difference. So our most recent voting year obviously was 2018, our most recent national election. And so for those, you compare 2014 and 2018, because those midterm numbers, and that age group saw a leap from about 20% turnout in 2014 to more than 30 in 2018. So that work that all these young people did from 2016 to 2018 to engage their peers worked. And I'm excited for to see what the turnout is this time. And the reason that I harp so much on teaching your kids how to vote and taking them with you to vote and telling them when you had to register and when, as a first time, you know, when you would have been able to first vote in this country, is something I think kids can learn and be really surprised by. But if someone starts voting when they're young and votes in their first 3 elections, they will be a lifetime voter, most likely. And so parents have a lot of power in helping their kids become voters. And the data, it's sort of hard to have full data on that, but all of the anecdotal evidence really indicates that parents and older siblings and cousins and friends have the absolute greatest influence on getting people to vote. So, and, you know, nearly anyone, the more they know about voting, no one hears the power that you have and the issues that you're voting for and is like, forget that, not interested. If you know enough about it, you're most likely to show up and do it. So that's my soapbox for helping your kids learn to vote.
Erin Geiger Smith, thank you for writing the book. Thank you for being here with us, and everyone go vote.
Yes, go vote wherever you are. Get out there. Thank you. Are we good? Can't get.
No.
Still talking about voting.
It still looks like we are on. But thank you so much. I think your information was